going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video I'm going to be installing some retrofit headlights on my Tacoma. If you watched my video from a couple weeks ago, you know that I can't wait to get rid of these Tacoma Spider Auto headlights, so super pumped to get those out of the truck today and get these new headlights in. And it's going to be a pretty interesting, pretty complicated install, so I'm going to go ahead and get right into it. So you may be wondering why I am currently in my office if we're going to be doing an install on the truck, and that's because I already did the install. However, the install was honestly pretty involved, and I wanted to go ahead and make a diagram and draw out exactly how the wiring goes for these headlights, installing them. So we're going to go ahead and first go over that wiring diagram in the office here, and then it'll make a little bit more sense once we go out into the garage and actually install the headlights. That said, guys, if you are watching this install video and you haven't yet seen my overview and review video of the Branchan custom retrofit headlights that we're going to be installing today, I would implore you to go watch that video first just to get an idea for what type of install I'm going to be doing, because the install is honestly a little bit different depending on what type of retrofits you get and what things or what features you get in your retrofits. So I'm going to go ahead and link the video up there as well as in the description. Go check that out and then come back to this video for the install. Alright guys, so with that said, let's go ahead and take a look at the wiring diagram and do a quick overview of this install. Alright guys, so here is the wiring diagram that I drew up for the install of my specific retrofit headlights. So I'm going to go ahead and go over each of the high-level components in this diagram, and then we'll talk about some of the wiring and how it all works. So to start off, this is very clearly labeled as a fuse box. Pretty self-explanatory. That's the fuse box in the engine bay that we're going to be plugging an add-a-fuse into. This down here is the XBT Bluetooth controller. So this is what's going to connect to your app so that you can go ahead and change the color of all the halos via an app on your phone. So this is my best shot at a diagram for the headlight. So as you can see here, we have the stock bulb, the high beam, the blinker cable connector, another connector that I'm not quite sure exactly what it does. We have the DRL connector, and then we have the aftermarket halo connectors that were put into the headlight. So this is going to be the headlight, and this just represents one headlight. Essentially everything from this over is going to be duplicated on the other side, and then these things are not duplicated. There's just one of each of these. And then down here, these are profile prism halo drivers. So we're going to need one of these drivers per halo or per LED light that we're going to want to control. So that's why you see that I have 3 of these here. And these are essentially what's powering the actual halos themselves. Alright, so that said, let's go ahead and talk about the headlight real quick. As you can see, this blinker is just the stock blinker connector. Our Highlands high beam is a little bit different than the stock high beam. It has a red and black cable coming out of it that goes to a connector, which is essentially an adapter for your stock high beam connector. So that's why you can see here the stock H8 or H11. I don't remember exactly which one it is, but that's going to be plugged into the connector, which goes to the Highlands high beam with these red and black wires. As you can also see here, the Highlands high beam has this white wire, and this is an optional feature for these Highlands high beams where you can use them as a DRL. So to do that, you just tap into your actual DRL cable here, your white one, and the Highlands high beam will light up dimly whenever you have your DRLs on, and it'll let the Highlands, the high beam, actually act as a DRL, just not very bright obviously because we don't want to blind people with the DRL. So like I said, that's optional. I didn't end up doing that, but it might be something that I look to do in the future. So that's why you can see here it's just kind of stubbed out to nothing. In addition to that, we have the stock bulb. So nothing changed here for me. I'm still using the stock headlight for now. In the future, I'm going to be switching this out with an HID kit that I have, but I didn't do that for time-saving purposes during this install. And then, as you can see here on the side, we have a marker connector. It's a white connector, so there's a cable coming out of the headlight with a white connector on it. And then out of the bottom of the headlight, we have the 2 halo connectors. So again, two more of these white connectors coming out of the bottom of the headlight. So as I alluded to before, each one of these halos or LEDs in the headlight are going to need their own driver. So this driver here essentially has 4 cables on it, more or less. So it has a cable with a white plug on the end, and that's what you're going to plug into the white plug coming out of the headlight, and that's how you're feeding power to the halo. It's going to have an orange cable and a black cable. The black cable is going to be your ground. So essentially what I ended up doing was just putting all of these grounds, tapping them all into one single ground wire and one single connector going to the ground in my truck. This orange cable here, essentially that is for the switchback functionality of the halos. And if you don't know what a switchback functionality is, it's basically when the halo switches to the blinker. It syncs up with your blinker whenever you turn the blinker on. So what you do is you tap that into your blinker, as you can see by this diagram here, and whenever you turn your blinker on, it's going to make the halo go orange, and when you turn the blinker off, it's going to switch back to the normal halo functionality. So that's what that orange cable is for. And the final cable coming out of this driver is going to be your 4-pin black connector, and this is what's going to go to the Bluetooth controller to actually enable you to control each of the halos individually. So that's essentially what this driver is and the purpose that it serves. So like I said, once again, you're going to need one of these for each of the halos that you have in the headlight, or each of the LEDs that you're wanting to control in the headlight. Alright, so as you can see here, each one of these drivers is going to a different plug on the Bluetooth controller. So on the Bluetooth controller, there are essentially 2 plugs here with the 4-pin, 2 more here with the 4-pin, and then 2 with the 5-pin. The 5-pin is going to be used specifically if you're doing a DRL that takes a little bit of a different controller, I guess. Not sure exactly why, because I don't have that on my build, but I didn't need to use that, so I went ahead and used the 5-pin to 4-pin adapter. So this plug on the Bluetooth controller is essentially the same as the other 4 plugs. Each one of these drivers goes to a different plug, and that's so that you can control the different halos individually. So if you were to mirror, or I guess if you were to draw out the other headlight, you basically want matching halos to go into the same connectors on the Bluetooth controller. So for example, this cable here is for the low beam halo. So on the other headlight, I'm going to want the low beam halo to be connected to this other 4-pin that's here, hiding behind this one technically. So when I go into the app and I control this specific connector, it's going to control both of the low beam halos at the same time. You definitely want them to get matched up so that you can control them at the same time and you don't have to do any guessing. So that's pretty much how the Bluetooth controller works. Other than those connectors, as you can see, we have a red and a black wire. Your black wire is going to be your ground, of course, so you got to ground that to the truck. And then your red wire is going to be your power. So for this, I used an ATA fuse, so the power cable crimped into an ATA fuse and then put into the fuse box in the Tacoma engine bay. Alright guys, so I know that was a ton of information and the diagram may have been a little bit confusing, but that said, if you guys have any questions at all, feel free to drop a comment below and I'll do my best to help out. I'm definitely not a pro with this, that's why I ended up drawing this diagram in the first place, because I had no clue how to wire these up, and I'm a little bit of a visual learner, so being able to see that helped out a lot. That said, let's go ahead and get out in the garage and get these installed, and hopefully the wiring diagram I just went over will help you understand a little bit better how I installed these headlights. So these are the retrofit headlights that I got custom ordered from Branchan Customs. I'm going to be leaving a link in the description below to his stuff, so you guys can go ahead and check him out if you want to get some custom retrofit headlights on your Tacoma or other Toyotas and Lexuses. He does a bunch of vehicles, so make sure to go hit that link in the description of the video and check him out. So as you can see here with the headlights, they are modified and have some wiring that we're going to need to figure out. So he sent me this Morimoto XBT color control. I believe this is the Bluetooth module to be able to control the color of the halos and whatnot with your phone via Bluetooth. So super cool, can't wait to get that installed, obviously. And then in addition to that, we have some of these halo drivers. So I'm not 100% sure yet how this is going to be all wired up, but I'm going to try to do a little bit of research here and just kind of wing it. But I will make sure to have a pretty detailed wiring diagram for you guys in the video, so that if you are going to do this install, you know exactly what you need to do. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and get the old headlights out. I'm not going to show you guys how to do that. I have another video showing how to remove and install stock or like stock Tacoma headlights. So I will link that up in the corner if you want to go watch that. And then you can see how to get the headlights out. But for now, I'm just going to set the camera down and do like a little time lapse of me getting these headlights out of the truck. Alright, so as you can see here, headlights are out. I'm going to go ahead and try to figure out where I'm going to place everything for the wiring. I think most of it's going to get stuck down in this area, down in here. You know, those are some flat surfaces where I can kind of sticky mount stuff and get stuff zip tied on. So I think I'm going to do like the Bluetooth controller in here, and then the other ballasts and whatnot just hooked up to that. And we're going to have to find a way to either stick it on here or zip tie it so that it's not bopping around too much in here while I'm driving and off-roading and whatnot. So it'll be a little bit of a challenge. I think I'm just going to go ahead and do it and then kind of show you guys how I did it, and hopefully it works out that way. Also, friendly reminder to disconnect the battery whenever you're going to be working on anything electronic on your truck. That way you don't short anything out or anything crazy like that. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'll get into the wiring stuff. Alright, so to start off here, this is the Morimoto XBT Bluetooth controller. As you can see, it has a bunch of wires coming from it, but the most important at the moment at least are this. So we have the red, which is going to go to this add fuse, which we are going to tap into the ignition fuse, so that way the headlight powering of the Bluetooth controller turns on when the truck turns on. And then the black here is obviously going to go to ground, which is not very surprising. So I'm going to go ahead and try to knock those out first and get everything set up. The rest of it's kind of just plug and play. You just got to figure out what to plug in. Alright, so I have the XBT hooked up right down there. I know you can barely see it, but you can see the wire sticking out. So here is the power cable for that. I have it tapped in here, crimped onto an add fuse. And then the add fuse, let me just explain this real quick. So we're using the 10 amp fuse. That's for the ignition, which is right there, that empty one right next to that 10. If it'll focus. Yep, so that one right there is the one that we're going to be using here. So the way these add fuses work is there's a load side and a draw side. The load side is here on the left, and that's the side you want to be in the hot side of the fuse down there. As you can see here, we have the 10 on the bottom. That's the amperage of the fuse that was originally in that spot, and then you always want one a little bit lower on the top there, and then you just gotta plug it in the correct way. You can check which side is the hot side by using a voltmeter, which I did over here. So essentially what we're going to do is plug this in here. Alright, so that one's plugged in there, the add fuse, and I'm going to clean it up a little bit so it's not, you know, hanging out here. I still got to put the fuse cover back on. But then the ground wire, I needed a little bit more, so I crimped in and attached my own black ground wire to the ground. And then if I go in and start up the truck, as you can see on the XBT here, there's no blue light. That little circle there, if you can see it, is the light for it. Alright, so I now have the first little ballast for the halos installed, and I decided to put them both into the same ground. I know I'm going to have to do this again with another one, but just want to get the first headlight installed here, make sure it's working properly before I go ahead and do the next one all the way across. And then I'm going to actually hook it up to the headlight and kind of see how we're looking. This orange cable here is just for getting the switchback installed. So I'm going to be installing this, tapping it into one of the cables on the blinker lights, or the plugs to the blinker. So that's what that's for. And then this guy, this long one here, actually plugs into the headlight and should power up the actual halo. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to get the light all plugged in now and see how we're looking. Alright, so as you can see here, I have both of the headlights in. They're just kind of sitting in there. They're not fully installed at the moment. So essentially with the wiring, what I found out is there is one of these guys. These are drivers. There's one of those per halo, and I have 2 halos here, as well as the Miso Customs side marker, which kind of counts as a halo. So essentially I have 3 of these little boxes per light that I have to install, which kind of sucks, but essentially what happens is there's a black cord coming off of here that plugs into the XBT. So this wire here goes to the XBT, this goes to the prism, and then there is a white connector here, which is the long ones that are reaching over, and those plug into the back of the headlight. So that's how that is powered. And then these orange cables you don't necessarily need, but these are how to get the switchback functionality. So essentially what you need to do is tap into your blinker light, and whenever your blinker goes on, it'll allow these to switch back and basically turn into a blinker. So I'm not sure if I'm going to do that yet. I need to figure out exactly which cable is going where in order to do that, because I don't want all of them lighting up when my blinker comes on. That would be a hassle. That said, in addition to each of these, you have to ground all of them. So I have this one fat ground cable coming in, and honestly, I'm sure this is a very sketchy way to do it, a very incorrect way to do it, but I have these T-taps going in for each of the prism boxes there, as you can see, and they're going into the ground cable. So I'm going to finish up wiring up this side with the other 2 of these profile prism boxes. As you can see, I have one installed down there. I was thinking I only needed 1 per side for some reason, but that's not right. There's 3 per side, unfortunately. So I'm going to have to figure out, 1, a better way to hold these up, because that's not good, and 2, a better place for them. So I'm going to keep grinding this out and get these installed. Alright, so I'm going to attempt to kind of show you the overview of the wiring here, but it's a little bit messy, so I'm going to draw out the full diagram and then talk about that in the office, just to kind of break it down a little bit better and a little bit clearer so that you guys know what I'm talking about. So like I was saying, there is essentially one of these driver boxes for each of the halos. So I have one here, one here, one here, one here, and then 2 back here. Most of them are zip tied. A couple of them are sticky taped on with 50-pound double-sided tape. So hopefully everything stays in place. It'll jiggle a little bit, but I think everything is relatively secure. That said, each of these boxes has 3 or 4 cables coming out of it, essentially. The shortest one is the power cable. So that's right here. This is what's going to the XBT box. So each of these boxes for each of the halos has a connector that goes to the XBT Bluetooth control. And then it has the power cable that goes to the actual headlight. So as you can see here, I have 3 of these wires kind of going over to the headlight on this side, and then I have the other ones all jumbled in back there behind this headlight. In addition to that, you have this orange cable. So this is the positive cable for this box. So if you want to wire these lights into your blinker, so essentially the halo would blink when the blinker blinks, you would need to tap into your blinker wire and then plug this in. I'm not sure if I'm going to do that yet. I might hold off for now just because this is taking a while, and I'm not sure if I want to get behind the headlight right now and try to figure that out. But yeah, so that is essentially all the wires, and then obviously you have the ground. So the ground is probably the most important for each of these. So as you can see kind of back here, all of those little blue clips are the ground cables tapped into these 2 ground wires here that are going to the ground nut. So all 6 of the drivers, each of those ground wires is going into the ground on the truck. They're all tapped into a couple of ground wires. I did 1 per headlight, so 3 are tapped into one headlight, and then 3 are tapped into the other headlight. So I was using these little T clamps here, and then these plug into those. So that's what you see back here when you go and look at all of these. It's a bunch of the T clamps with the cables tucked in. So these are all zip tied together, and then I'm going to zip tie them up in this corner here so they're kind of out of the way and not jiggling everywhere. And I just want to make sure there's essentially no wires rubbing up against anything hot or moving in the truck. So I'm also going to have to tidy up these orange cables that are everywhere. But once that's done, it's done, and I will go ahead and turn the truck on and show you guys the headlights. Alright, so hopefully you guys can hear me, but here's my phone with the color control. So if I want to turn the side markers a different color, I can change that. Let's say blue. And then if I want the low beam, change that color. Alright guys, so that's it for today's video. Once again, if you guys have any questions at all, feel free to drop a comment below and I'll try to get back to you and help you guys out. That said, make sure to drop a like on this video. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, and thank you guys so much for watching. Catch you in the next one.